So, hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're so happy to have you here. Before we officially kick things off and get started with our presentations and demos, I'm just going to run over a few housekeeping items for everyone. So first of all, we ask that everyone please stay on mute so that we can minimize distractions from our speakers. So please stay on mute and keep those cameras off so that our speakers don't have any distractions when they're sharing their demos today. If you do have any questions for our speakers, you're more than welcome to utilize the chat feature you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom window. You can go ahead and open the chat, and we ask that you please put hashtag QA before any of your questions so that we can easily find your questions and present them to the speakers during the Q&A sessions. And with that, I believe that's everything. I will go ahead and pass it over to Linda Peters to introduce everyone and get us started. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kelly. And again, thanks to everyone who's here this morning, including a great group of speakers, which I'm going to introduce here in just a moment. Today's session is being hosted by CARIGEO. CARIGEO is the Caribbean Geospatial Development Initiative. It is a group underneath the GGIM Americas. And this webinar is being hosted in conjunction with both GGIM Americas as well as the GGIM Disasters Working Group. So we're very thankful for all of their support. As I said, we've got a good group of people here today, so I'm going to start to go around the room and ask folks to introduce themselves, and I'm going to start with Ms. Simone Lloyd. Simone.
Good day, everyone. Simone Lloyd, Senior GIS Manager and Trainer for Jamaica's National Spatial Data Management Branch, and we fall within Jamaica's Ministry of Housing, Urban Renewal, Environment, and Climate Change. I also represent the UN GGIM Working Group Disaster, serving as Jamaica's co-chair support for that body, and also serving on the CARIGEO Steering Committee. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Simone. I'm going to go next to Michelle. Michelle Sinclair, please.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Michelle Sinclair from Barbados. I am with the Lands and Surveys Department under the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance. I serve as a co-chair for UNGJM Americas as a focal from Barbados and on the CARIGEO Steering Committee. Welcome to everyone.
Thanks, Michelle. Roshan, Mr. Roshan Clark, please.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good day to everyone. My name is Roshan Clark. I'm the Deputy Chief Executive Officer at Spatial Innovation. We are the exclusive distributor for Esri across the English-speaking Caribbean, covering from as northern as Bahamas to Guyana. I also wear the hat of Head of Geospatial Technologies, where we promote the latest products from Esri and other brands. And I'm also newly appointed the head of the small government EA within the company as we look to support national governments across the region with enterprise agreement. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you on behalf of my company for joining. Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, thanks, Roshan. Next, I'm going to turn to our colleagues from SEDEMA. Renee, Ms. Renee Babb, please. Renee, you are on mute.
Yep. Yeah, thank you. Hi, good day, everyone. I'm Renee Babb. I'm the GIS specialist at the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency. And I also wear the hat of Vice President of the ERISA Caribbean chapter, which covers all of the Caribbean territories in the Urban Regional Information Systems Association. Over.
Great. Thanks, Renee. Good to have you. Aronde, Mr. Aronde Lambert from SEDEMA as well. Aronde, can you introduce yourself? We might be having an issue with Aronde with microphone. Okay, we'll come back around. We'll keep going, and I want to turn to the NASA team next. I'll start out with Jeremy Kirkendall. Please, sir.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Kirkendall. I am one of the GIS portal administrators for the NASA Disasters Program. So when our scientists like Robert create products, we work with them to put them into our GIS portal, and then they feed into places like the Caribbean Geoportal so that end users like all of you can access and use the data.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jeremy. Next, Garrett Lane, please.
Hi, my name is Garrett Lane. I am also a GIS portal administrator for the NASA Disasters Program. So I also help translate NASA science data to be able to be used by end users during disasters.
Great. And Robert Emberson, please, sir.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Robert Emberson. I'm an associate scientist at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, and my primary role is to develop landslide hazard and risk assessments using satellite data. And I'm excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, great, thanks, and welcome to all of you for being here. Next, a couple more folks from the country level. We're really excited. Miss Laverne Ryan, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Laverne Ryan. I am the GIS manager on Montserrat. I am based within the Ministry of Agriculture, Land, Housing, and the Environment. And I am also a Map Action volunteer. And I'm grateful to be here to learn and to share. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much. And Ms. Dornette Hall as well, from representing the country level. Dornette, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Dornette Hall. I am the town planner in charge of the physical planning unit of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and we fall in the Ministry of Transport and Works, Land and Surveys, and Physical Planning. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for having me, and I look forward to an informative session.
Yeah, thanks, Dornette. Really glad that you're here. And one last colleague to turn to, Sean McGinnis. Please, Sean.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone, and thanks for joining us. My name is Sean McGinnis, and I am the Geoportals Program Manager at Esri.
Thanks, Sean. And again, welcome everyone. Linda Peters here with Esri, also a part of the CareGeo group. So really pleased to be with you here and to be sharing information for the community. We've got a lot to go through today. I'm going to quickly go through the agenda here. Because of bandwidth, we're going to turn cameras off unless someone's talking. So we want you to get to know us, but we want to make sure most of all you can see the content. We're going to start out with a quick overview on the importance of geospatial and disasters. So we're going to first hear from Ms. Simone Lloyd of Jamaica on the GGIM Disasters Working Group perspective, and then also from Michelle Sinclair, who'll give us a view on the key issues of disasters in the Caribbean. Next, we're going to have an interactive session that will be led by Roshan Clark, but will include our colleagues from SEDEMA and Mr. McGinnis, who you just met, of Esri from the program team. Next, we're going to follow that with a really great session from NASA and highlight many of the different data products that you have access to through the platform. And finally, we're going to hear from Laverne and Dornette on their country experiences based on real world recent experiences in this area and some of the lessons learned. So we've got a lot, as I said, we're going to keep it interactive throughout. Please use the chat, give us your questions. We're going to have some poll questions for you along the way as well. So stick with us, it should be a really great session. So with that, I want to invite Simone to present. So I'm going to stop sharing, Simone. I'll turn it over to you and ask you to kick us off.
All right, wonderful, thank you. So I'll be sharing with you with respect to the United Nations Global Geospatial Information Management Working Group on Geospatial Information and Services for Disasters. Many of us, if not all, would be familiar with the Sendai framework, which came out in 2015. It goes up until 2030. And this document really focuses on a global initiative to really reduce the impact of disasters, disaster risk and losses, in particular with respect to lives, livelihoods, health, and in particular with that, how it is that we can reduce the whole economic, physical, and social, cultural impacts, and also environmental impacts of disasters. So this framework looks at how it is that significant reductions, how it is that we can work towards ensuring that we have a reduction in global disaster mortality rates, also reducing the number of affected people globally, the economic losses and the damages, in particular where infrastructure is concerned, but also how we can significantly increase or level in terms of our risk reduction strategies on a country level throughout the various regions, and also significantly enhance our cooperation and our coordination efforts within these various countries. And with that, being able to really develop multi-hazard early warning systems that can effectively support our response efforts. Now, the Sendai framework would have been the precursor to what would now be the strategic framework on geospatial information and services to support that particular framework. So one of the core targets, there are 4 priority areas for the Sendai framework, one of which focuses on ensuring that we're able to understand what the situation is with respect to disasters globally, and in understanding, being able to effectively build our response efforts. So with that came the strategic framework, and the strategic framework was developed by UNGGI and Working Group Disasters. So the working group was actually developed to develop this framework and to implement it globally. So the strategic framework is directly aligned with the Sendai framework. In so doing, so 2015 would have been when the Sendai framework was established, and also the year in which the working group was established. And with the working group established, ensuring that this working group would be practical in our focus, we will of course look at the outcomes of this framework and look at its implementation globally, in addition to specific focus on developing countries, and in particular, our capacity building and knowledge sharing. And so with that, the Caribbean region is of prime focus for us, given the fact that it is made up of many developing countries and small island developing states who really need support with respect to our capacity building and knowledge sharing efforts to ensure that we're able to more effectively respond to disasters. Additionally, ensuring that the framework and the working group focuses on the various regions of the world, because of course, to the various regions, they are specific with respect to the various disasters, various hazards that impact them. So the working group has a vision of ensuring that accurate, timely, but also reliable geospatial information and services, that these are made available, and in so doing in a coordinated way to various decision makers, but also whoever are the operational leads during the various phases of disaster risk management and reduction. In so doing, we are here to provide a forum for dialogue and coordination among the various disaster players within the UN system and otherwise. We're here to promote and provide, as much as possible, the availability and accessibility of the data that is needed to drive this entire process. And in so doing, in a very collaborative and also coordinated way. So the strategic framework, the Sendai framework, has 4 priority areas. The strategic framework in its structure actually patterns the Sendai framework to a significant extent. The strategic framework has 5 priority areas, and these areas include focus on governance and policies, in addition to awareness raising and capacity building, data management, common infrastructure and services, but also resource mobilization. So these are the 5 priority areas of which we focus. There would have been a global administration of the survey, the assessment survey for the framework last year with respect to gauging where various member states are in terms of their readiness, given these 5 priority areas. And as such, this year, we'll be ensuring that a background paper is prepared on the results of this assessment, and that this will be presented to the 11th session of UNGGIM in August. So the working group really focuses on ensuring that geospatial information and services coupled with relevant statistical information is readily available to ensure that we're better able to understand what the various paradigms are with respect to disasters, but also being able to develop relevant, applicable policies that drive the whole decision-making process. and help to reduce the impacts of these various disasters. Now, the Caribbean region, of which Michelle will speak more to, is diverse. And in our diversity, we are impacted by many various hazards. These include hurricanes, tropical storms, tropical depressions, and thaws in particular. And it's very timely that the CariGeo initiative has decided to have this webinar at this particular point in June, which is the beginning of the Atlantic hurricane season, given the fact that the Caribbean region is significantly impacted by these various meteorological events. In addition, earthquakes, volcanoes, landslides and floods, forest fires, wildfires, droughts, and the list goes on, in addition to other disasters such as COVID-19, as a pandemic and other epidemics that have impacted the region. So as we can see, the risk level, the disaster risk level within the region rates from moderate to very high. And so the working group disasters was very happy to collaborate with the CariGeo Steering Committee under UNGGM Americas in spearheading the development of this particular webinar that focuses on the Caribbean region, looks at our status with respect to disasters, looks at our impact, as we can see here, which is very significant in terms of damage, frequency, and also the affected population whenever these various events occur. So the working group is very happy to partner with CariGeo in ensuring that we're able to promote the importance of geospatial information and services in response to disasters, and how it is that the Caribbean Geoportal is a very important platform to support an open community throughout the region that can provide geospatial information to really drive the whole analysis and decision-making process where disasters are concerned within the region. So we're very happy to have on board NASA and other disaster players such as NOAA, the CEOS Working Group on Disasters, and the GEO Working Group. So we're very happy to be partnering with these various bodies as we strive to ensure and promote the active use of geospatial information and services in response to disasters through the region, and with focus where this particular webinar is concerned, that of really utilizing the Geoportal. And so this will be the second of the three-part series. We follow up with a third webinar that looks at the back end of the Geoportal, looking at metadata maintenance and best practices. And so we're very happy that you've been able to join us today. And we look forward to you being able to utilize the Geoportal to really drive your work within the region in response to disasters. I thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Simone. That was great. Really appreciate the broad level introduction there. I'm going to next invite Michelle Sinclair to give us a perspective from the country level for the region. Michelle, if you want to share your screen as well.
Thank you, Linda. To fully understand the importance of geospatial information, the strategic framework for geoservices and geoinformation for disasters that Simone just spoke about, and the role of the Caribbean Geoportal, I will spend a few minutes just to underline how vulnerable our region is, the severity and the prevalence of natural disasters affecting us, and the economic, the social, and the environmental costs of those impacts. So the focus of CariGeo and the Caribbean Geoportal is the Caribbean region as a subgroup of the Americas. We are a region of countries and overseas territories stretching from Bahamas in the north to Guyana and Suriname in the south, with a 2019 population estimate of approximately 44.2 million people. So we're small island developing states with GDP per capita that ranges between US $33,000 all the way down to US $745 by the same 2019 estimates. These facts are important because as small island developing states in the Caribbean, we are extremely vulnerable to the impacts of natural disasters. In particular, small island developing states have recognized as a special case for sustainable development in view of our unique and our particular vulnerabilities, including our small size, our remoteness from markets, our narrow resource base and our narrow export base, and exposure to global environmental challenges and external economic shocks, including a large range of impacts from climate change and potentially more frequent and intense natural disasters. Natural disasters have massive economic and social and human costs. They take a deep toll on our growth prospects, they erode our financial cushion and our financial space, and their huge costs in their aftermath funnel scarce resources we have away from health, education, and social spending. And climate change will only intensify these risks. So according to a report by the UN's Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, a 2020 report, Latin America and the Caribbean is the second most disaster-prone region in the world. And for the period of 1990 to 2008, the Caribbean experienced 165 natural disasters. And these are specifically, but not limited to, tropical storms and hurricanes, flooding, and that includes both coastal flooding and river flooding. Most recently and top of mind, volcanic activity, and earthquakes and seismic events and droughts. The following slides share some details of the impacts of some of the more recent events that we in the Caribbean have experienced. So with respect to tropical storms and hurricanes, as Simone mentioned, is June 22nd, and we are at the start of our annual hurricane season. And the storms impacting the Caribbean are becoming increasingly more powerful, producing increased rainfall, higher storm surge due to climate change, more frequent and intense storms means there is less time for recovery between events. On average, the region experiences 17 hurricanes per year, and between the period of 2000 and 2019, there were at least 23 Category 5 hurricanes. And to give you some more details about that, the most recent Category 5 hurricanes are Hurricanes Irma, Hurricane Maria, and Hurricane Dorian. Now, Hurricane Irma in 2017 affected many Caribbean countries and territories, including Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, the Bahamas, Barbados, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Haiti, Puerto Rico, St. Bart's, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Martin, Turks and Caicos, and the British and US Virgin Islands. Hurricane Irma was followed shortly after by Hurricane Maria, another Category 5, responsible for the deaths of 143 persons. And in 2019, we all remember the devastation caused by Hurricane Dorian, peaking at 220 miles per hour as it remained almost stationary over Bahamas. Abaco, the most severely affected island, suffered thousands of flattened houses, downed power lines, damaged roads and water wells, and resulted in several lives lost. Also, and this affected us personally in Barbados as well, and to such a great extent, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, was the volcanic eruption of La Soufrière in St. Vincent. And this happened on April 9th, 2021, this year. And that was for the first time since April 1979. This eruption, followed by continuing minor eruptions in the following days, emitted volcanic ash that fell on communities, displaced people, destroyed crops and agriculture, and compromised infrastructure. And I'm sure that Laverna and Darnett will share much more on that during their presentations. And with respect to earthquakes, and when we compare ourselves to our counterparts in Central America and South America, the Caribbean, yes, is less exposed to earthquake hazards. However, the 2010 earthquake in Haiti is regarded as one of the deadliest natural disasters on record. The damage was enormous and overwhelming, with over 300,000 people dead and as many injured. It created a humanitarian crisis, leaving millions without shelter, water, food, and other basic necessities. Losses were estimated between US 7 and 14 billion, with Haiti still grappling with recovery to this day. So in all the cases I've shared, and as is the case for most Caribbean countries, there are economic, social, and environmental impacts of these natural disasters. For us in the Caribbean, the economic cost of these disasters is volatile, it's alarming, and most certainly cannot be ignored. Natural disasters occur more frequently and cost more on average in the Caribbean, as you can see from the graphic, than anywhere else, and even in comparison to other small island states. According to the IMF, the period between 1990 and 2014 saw the Caribbean sustain losses between 1.8% and 2% of our gross domestic product per annum. And Hurricane Maria in 2017 was estimated to have cost Dominica 225% of its GDP, leaving huge construction costs that need years and take years to fulfill. Natural disasters have wide-ranging, intangible impacts as well on health, on well-being, on education, community engagement, and employment, with disasters multiplying the number of people at risk and the vulnerable populations, compromising our quality of life, and unfortunately also resulting in the loss of lives. We must also consider that with natural disasters comes the destruction of habitats and structural changes to ecosystems that will also have negative effects. So for a region so exposed to calamity, building resilience is not a matter of choice, but a matter of survival. Countries can adopt policies to reduce the human and economic costs of disasters and build resilience to future shocks through better preparation and a more effective response. And data, especially geospatial data, sits as a foundational element on that pathway to resilience. It is for this reason that CariGeo and Esri have partnered to develop and encourage the use of the Caribbean Geoportal. And I encourage you to participate and to contribute in this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Really great background there. And as everyone can see, or if you're living in the region, you know how critical this information is. I want to move us into the next section right away. It's a really important session, and invite my colleague Sean McGinnis to take the screen share and begin to share slides as I invite Rashawn, Renee, and Orande to come and join us. And Orande is back with us. He had to step away for a minute. They're activated there at Sedima, no surprise. So Orande, hopefully we can hear you now. And Rashawn is going to kick us off and lead us through with the first question. So Sean, if you wouldn't mind to put the first question on screen for us, we'll turn it over to Rashawn.
All right, thank you, Linda. And I hope everyone is still with us and quite engaged. This is a part of the session where we go through some questions that may be on your mind, or you may come across it in the near future. So we're going to go through a few questions, and then I'm going to throw to the team of colleagues to walk us through the answers. So the first question is around understanding the potential impact of the disaster, right? So the question is, the frequency and intensity of threats and hazards is ever increasing. How are you using GIS or geospatial information, tools, and technology today to better understand the potential impact to citizens and infrastructure? And I'll put this out to everyone on this part, Sean, Renee, and Orande.
Oh, thanks, Rashawn. Let me first kick it off. So here at Sedima, GIS data is ever useful. Specifically, having aerial data from drones, UAVs, satellites, planes, helicopters even, where we will get a quick visualization of the population distribution, the population centers, the transportation hubs, and the transportation networks, where they're impacted as it relates to a particular hazard or threat in the countries. And from there, we integrate other GIS data, statistical based, gender based, especially that is the forefront because genders have different impacts as well to a particular hazard. We look at the male and the female genders. We look at the age and also the various vulnerabilities that the populations are experiencing. So we have disabled, we have the blind, we have other types of disabilities that need more support than those who are able.
Correct.
We also look at the use of GIS in navigating population impacts to get them to safer zones and to shelters, to mobilize relief, to get the various impacted areas to have the various relief efforts, relief supplies, to have a safer experience from the hazard impact. And we also look at the underlying hazard mapping as well. So floods, landslides, volcanic and earthquake hazards, those have specific criteria that can be developed in a GIS to then show where those areas are the most vulnerable in an impact. And just to round out what was said earlier by Simone and Michelle, SEDIMA handles all of those or responds to all of those types of natural hazards, as well as the health and ecological hazards, such as the global pandemic that we're in right now. But we also consider other types of hazards, man-made hazards, the chemical, the biological, the radiological, the nuclear, as well as air and water pollution and civil unrest. So not just natural disasters, but man-made disasters are part of our mandate here at SEDIMA.
Awesome. I'm appreciative of the answer, particularly as we refer to gender balance and equality in terms of response, as well as that addition at the end about man-made disasters, which sometimes we tend to overlook. So I don't know, is there anything that you'd like to add to this, Sean, or do we move to the next question?
No, actually, yeah, just to reinforce actually what Renee was speaking to is the fact that as you know, we can't focus on one hazard or that sort of thing. You know, sometimes we do get a bit carried away when we say hurricane season, and you know, sometimes you think it's just the hurricanes that are there. Right. But we follow basically the strategy, which is a comprehensive disaster management strategy, which speaks to all hazards and in all phases, and not just that, but it basically takes into account everyone. Basically, everyone has a part to play. So yeah, so you know, even from the pre-impact analysis, which is what we use a lot of the data for. We even use it for training and exercising and all of that. So in the strategy, you would see that ICT and gender are basically considered cross-cutting themes. So yeah, so it is something that we pay keen attention to in how we operate. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Aaron. All right, well, let's move to the next question. This question is around how to estimate, prepare, and deploy limited resources. And the question is, while preparing where to deploy resources is critical today to ensure equitable outcomes, how are you using geography and spatial awareness to better understand this key issue?
Okay, thanks for that question. Yep. So if you can picture the Caribbean region that we handle, we're running from Belize up to the Bahamas, all the way to Antigua and Barbuda, and down to Suriname, and everything in between, except for Puerto Rico and Cuba and Dominican Republic.
Right.
So how we then position ourselves, we have the 19 participating states of SEDIMA, and we've divided up that into 4 subregions with 4 focal points in Jamaica, which is handling Belize, Bahamas, Cayman Islands, Haiti, and Antigua and Barbuda, which is handling the northern or the northeastern Caribbean, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, and then we have Anguilla there as well, and the BVI. Then we have Barbados, which is responsible for St. Lucia, Dominica, and St. Vincent. And we have Trinidad and Tobago covering Grenada, Suriname, and Guyana.
Okay.
So in those sub-regional focal points, as we call them, we store relief supplies for ease of distribution to countries across the region. Those then can be pre-deployed once we have a slow onset hazard, such as a hurricane, and we can track its movements, or they can be deployed after impact. And even if we only pull resources from one SRFP, sub-regional focal point, we can then pull from other locations to supplement the aid distribution after an impact. So the GIS tools and the data help us in the pre-positioning of both relief supplies, but also personnel, because when we have to deploy personnel, we need to pull them from all countries or a variety of countries. We have to then transport them using commercial aviation, or our regional security system will then support us in the movement of personnel, and also in the positioning of our telecoms infrastructure, because more likely than with the hurricane, and we do deploy some telecommunications assets over.
All right, thank you very much for that, Renee. Is there anybody else?
If I can
go ahead.
hop in on this, to what Renee was talking about, looking at hurricane patterns and where things are impacting and how to prepare effectively for these events. Looking at all of the tracks is kind of a mess. When you look at it, it looks like spaghetti. But as things start to slow down, and with the hurricane example, the slow-moving hurricane coming in, the importance of being able to understand where those populations are and being able to understand what the demographic makeup of those population areas are and what those needs might be to effectively allocate those resources. So this is the storm line from Hurricane Irma, the wind swath that came from that storm, as well as the population. So to identify what needs might be needed where, geospatial shared and authoritative data coming from a variety of sources are available with the capabilities to start to see this inside the Caribbean Geoportal. So there are a number of different tools that people can start to bring in and use to better prepare for events of differing scales and type.
Okay, now this is awesome, and this is on the Caribbean Geoportal.
Yep. All of that data is freely available. They're open data sets, and people can start to bring them into either capabilities inside the Geoportal, or if you have local GIS, these resources are available to be brought into the different workflows that people are performing.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Renee. Should we jump to the next question? Okay. So this one is around how to monitor rapidly changing conditions. All right, so often in a disaster setting, conditions in the field degrade quickly. How do you, and this is for everyone here, how do you see GIS being used to support ready response during field operations? Renee, do you want to go at this first, or should we make a run there?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. Thanks. We have the ability to use some GIS technologies such as drone and UAV technologies with our field assessment teams or teams on the ground, where they can do on-the-fly visualizations of the impact, if possible, as it's happening. We've seen some instances of that in the past. If you followed the Dorian 2019 impact of the Bahamas, there were plenty of news crews on the ground giving live feedback to emergency operation centers and the like for decision making. Additionally, we can pre-design some survey forms that can be disseminated before impact so that the citizens can share geotag photos and other location-based information back to the EOCs using a mobile device. And those can be done via SMS or social media platforms. And if ever anyone has used like the Twitter or the Facebook marked as safe functionalities, those can also be utilized in an emergency setting. For some events though, such as hydrometeorological events, hurricanes and storms, the monitoring of the weather systems or the weather services also provide key guidance on the conditions as they evolve on the ground. And those can be positive or negative impact to what the operations are at the time. Over.
Yeah, I was just going to add alongside of that, Renee, this is just that. So here's a weather map with all of the warnings, the watches, as well as some buoy and weather station data with radar as well. So this is just an example of being able to bring all of those things together inside the web map. And I know with the work that you do, this is open information, but you also have the secure information to work within the sensitive response community as well. So it doesn't mean that all of the data has to be wide open and available. You're able to secure that sensitive information to share with just the people authorized to access it.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. And another, oh shoot, I didn't mean to close that. Here we go. To the point that you were bringing up around the crowdsource as well. This was an example from Hurricane Maria and NAPSIG. When they shared the app, they opened up an application to allow for the crowdsourcing of information. So people were able to come in and just share those images of what they were seeing. So you can leverage the citizens as sensors and start to gather information that you may not necessarily be able to access, force multiplier to get a better understanding of what's going on out there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and not to steal the thunder of Robert, but the NASA is going to talk about in a few minutes their landslide application as well. So focused on crowdsourcing information around landslides. So another way to kind of gather more details and bring that info in to get a true understanding of what's happening.
Now, I think this is important on two levels. The crowdsourcing is important on two levels. One, it's that in some responses, some disasters, timeliness is key, right? So getting the information as fast as possible from the people on the ground, that's an advantage. But also, I think it's fair to say that social media is the underlying communication for the majority of at least this side of the world. So you would definitely have people quicker to do this than to try and send the information any other way. So I like the fact that you mentioned the Facebook and Twitter market safe, Renee. Those things are important for the non-GIS folks like us who are on the ground that just want to share information quickly. So
Yeah,
thanks
definitely. Yep.
All right, so our next question is around the assess and report damage stage. During and after a storm, understanding areas of impact are critical to response. How do you begin to understand evolving events for damage assessments towards supporting restoration efforts?
Okay. All right. This can be quite varied across our 19 participating states, which have different economies of scale, population characteristics, land sizes, and also the terrain that is impacted. You must also consider time of day when an impact happens. That's a major factor because it can really impact the movement of the population away from dangerous areas. So emergency response relies heavily on information gathered from our citizens and also credible sources of before, during, and after a hazard impact. So the lines of communication are also very important for the flow of information back to the decision-making teams in the EOC. And that's where we will better understand the scale of a hazard impact and to prioritize where the emergency response needs to go to support the most vulnerable and the most heavily impacted areas, especially where transportation networks are impacted, such as roads and bridges. So before an impact occurs, the pre-planning data, which would be the road infrastructure, the health and other critical sectors, such as police stations and fire stations, the location of all of the clinics and hospitals, and also the distribution of the population based on gender, which is age, as well as their sex and their vulnerabilities, and the pre-positioning of any critical relief supplies and personnel based on one, the historical impacts for that country, if it's a similar impact, and also the areas of potential impact if we're looking at a slow onset hazard, such as a storm. So we have the rapid situational overview or initial situational overview that happens at the time of impact. And this is done within usually the first 24 hours of impact. Then we move into other types of hazard impact assessments, such as the initial damage human needs assessments, usually done in the first week. We look at a detailed damage sector assessment, where we're looking at the various important sectors for a particular country, which could be tourism for some, agriculture, the health sector, as well as others, but more critical, such as food distribution. And then we move into other types of post-disaster assessments, like the PDNA, the post-disaster needs assessment, which is usually done within the first 3 weeks or around 21 days. And also the damage and loss assessments, which is done at the end, to understand the scale and to quantify the scale of the hazard impact. Economically, that can vary, and also human impact, the displacement of the population. And as we've seen with St. Vincent, the persons living in the north of the country, they've been displaced since the major eruption at April 2021. And there's uncertainty of when they can return. So things like that we need to be very, very considerate of, and having persons stay in shelter cannot be an indefinite scenario. So looking at the assessments for damage and how to get persons back to a state of normalcy and how long that will take is very critical GIS really helps with that decision making and planning need. Over.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and some of those initial damage assessments and responses that you were talking about, tools within the geoportal. There are solutions that can be stood up very quickly within the geoportal. So if you don't have these capabilities or are in need, if you're going to enable a work group, there's a series of tools that can be launched from the geoportal to allow people to start to go out and capture that initial damage assessment for you, that kind of phase one that you were alluding to, where you can send people out to capture info about the residential damage, commercial, as well as those public facilities that you were referencing. And there's the need to understand what's going on in the field or back at the command center or whatever has been stood up. And there, by deploying the application, there's no configuration needed by the users. It comes with the dashboard and allows to immediately see what's going on in the status of the damage in the affected areas that are there. I'll be honest, I deployed this application this morning in under 4 minutes. So I timed it because I was like, well, I've never launched one of these before. But from clicking the deploy now to being able to log in and share information was under 4 minutes. So I would definitely suggest doing it in Blue Sky to test it first. But there are a number of tools and solutions that are available to all Caribbean Geoportal users that they can take advantage of to start to gather that information. And this is just one of them.
Thanks, Sean. That's under 4 minutes. So maybe for the non-expert or maybe 10 minutes. So let's see.
Hey, can I layer in, because we've got a couple of really interesting questions coming from the audience. The first one I'll ask was the most recent, and I think it's fairly simple. This is coming from Allenson, asking regarding the recent eruption in St. Vincent, where can the initial damage assessment report be accessed? I think, Renee, that's to you.
Or Aronde. I mean, you called my name.
Yeah, Aronde, tell us.
Okay. So I know we did do a detailed sector analysis report, and this was handed over to the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I honestly have to double check, but I can't remember if they actually made it public as yet. So that would definitely be with the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I have to double check availability on that. And basically, this is the document that they would have used to sort of make a determination as to what was the economic impact of the eruption so far, and they would have gone to, for instance, the lending agencies like the World Bank and so on to make a case for funding and those things. So the document, I know we did submit a document to them, but as to whether or not it's publicly available, I can't say for sure right now.
Okay, well, perhaps we can get a follow-up on that from you, and if we get a link, we'll share that out with everyone. There was another interesting question that I want to pull up because it's relevant to this question, and this is coming from Andy Murray, asking about the census data. So does the portal primarily rely on the census data and statistics for population estimates, or use some other tools and technologies for this? He's a bit worried because statistical offices are getting squeezed with fiscal tightening, as we all know. So that is the question. Sean, perhaps, I don't know if you want to take a stab at that. I will also just provide a bit of an answer, because currently we would love to encourage statistical offices to share information into the Caribbean Geoportal. That's not happening quite yet, but we would very much like that to happen. There is some data in the portal already, correct, Sean?
Yeah, there is some data in there. And because the geoportal is about sharing and federating access to the data, we're trying to bring in the data, the best available data from the authoritative sources to make available to the broader community. So there are some tools that are leveraging some interesting ways to kind of understand population or impacts. The one that's coming to my mind, again, to not steal NASA's thunder, I'm trying to remember the black marble nighttime imagery to understand, the near time state of things is a way to understand potentially impacted areas. But yeah, we're trying to bring in the best available data. And if there are ideas that you have or have seen certain capabilities that might help, let's have a conversation and see if we can figure out a way to bring them in or model them to help support whatever the needs of the community are.
Great, thanks. Rashawn, I'll turn it back to you. I'm going to keep filtering. We have more questions coming in.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Linda. I think we're up on the next question, which is this is about providing real-time operational status. So for responders, having secure access to real-time situation information as being key, how are we using GIS to help in this area? I'll start with you, Renee.
Thanks, Rashawn. For us, what we tend to do is provide GIS tools to our field deployed personnel, GPS devices, mobile enabled GPS phones or tablets, so they can feed back geotagged information back to the EOC for analysis and actioning. But we're trying to get the crowdsourcing activity more developed to enable citizens to also share their experiences real time during an impact and immediately after an impact, as this will strengthen our decision-making processes to better respond in a more timely and efficient manner, and to provide relief to the particular populations that are most impacted. Some other real-time reports that we like to see included would be impacted transportation networks, roads and bridges that are damaged during impact, and that will then drive our evacuation efforts for the population, as well as search and rescue operations, which are heavily reliant on the transportation network. So those are the key factors that we seem to be reliant on. Not all roads in the region have been mapped sufficiently with the detail that is required. For example, we may have the road lines and some locations of bridges, but the attribution of these transportation networks and other assets is very critical to support the decision-making process. For example, if the road is a cart road, for example, versus asphalt or a concrete road, it will have a different impact if it is inundated with some floodwaters. So different attribution criteria are required for all important assets on the ground, so that will be a good indicator for how we then proceed with our decision making. Over.
I basically just want to add to that. Take it from a slightly different angle and from a more strategic level. One of the key areas that we have found is that communications in the whole is a very critical issue in this whole in getting information. And one of the things that we've been pushing for and is to have better partnerships with our service providers, the flows and the Digicells of the region and other telecommunications providers, to sort of be able to have information once the networks are available, to have information flowing freely well, I shouldn't say freely, but having information flowing securely to and fro from the EOC to the persons in the field and so on. This is something that we're looking at from a strategic level. We also have to we also do deploy our teams with satellite equipment and that sort of thing, because we do realize that, you know, sometimes there are no comms around, and you have to make use of what's available there. So all of these do combine to ensure that you know, the data does get in and data does get out. So it's usually, you know, sometimes you make it up as you go on the ground. But I just wanted to just throw that into the mix there, that the communications is very key for us to have this secure access.
Well, Aaron, it's almost like a perfect segue into our final question, but I don't know if Sean wants to add anything on this before we go to the last question.
Nope. And I think Linda's popping in here.
Yeah, I have a couple of other questions. If I can, I'm going to interrupt you to give us a Q&A from the chat. One of these is a coming in question from Ryan. How are you able to eliminate repetitive geotag information from citizens and field response officers? And how important is the accuracy of location information?
Okay, thanks for that question, Ryan. I'm going to tackle it in two parts. So from the citizen aspect of it, they're going to have a specific type of form to provide the type of information that we would want from them, versus the field response officer, which will have his or her unique identifier included in their particular data submission. So the geotagging will then be clearly identified as to who is a field response officer versus the average Joe on the street. From there, we will then disseminate in the GIS what is repetitive and what is not repetitive. So that then filters out the information that comes in from the population and allows us to then action it. In terms of the accuracy of the location, geotagging, if you're using your mobile device, is plus or minus 10 meters at best, which is not too bad considering the size of the object that's being geotagged. Anything smaller than 5 meters, you will need something more accurate than a 10-meter device. So, for example, if you're looking at water meters, which is less than 6 or 7 inches in length, then we will need something to that or as close to that for the accuracy to locate that. But if you're looking for a house or a large feature, if that feature isn't there, you're either in the wrong location or it's gone. So that's how I look at accuracy for emergency response. Over.
Thank you. Thanks, Renee. Yeah, that's great. I have one other question from the audience that I want to make sure I get in, because Kevin Knoll's been very patient. He asked, what extent are geospatial technologies integrated into pre-planning and response capabilities for Caribbean first responders? Sean, do you want to take a stab at that, or maybe Arande?
I think Arande would be a much better person to answer that question than me.
Sorry, Linda, could you just repeat the question? Sorry about that.
Yeah. To what extent are geospatial technologies being integrated in pre-planning and response?
Okay, so yeah, so I know Renee will weigh in on that a bit, seeing that is her forte as a GIS specialist. But so for us, we are. So how do I put this? We have made a commitment to sort of have a bigger push into ICTs going forward, and a lot of what we are doing now with geospatial technology is leading towards that, and Rennie will delve a bit deep into it. I just wanted to mention, for instance, what brought us with this partnership with you guys on the Caribbean Geoportal was based on what we call our GeoCRIS, which is part of the Caribbean Risk Information System, and the GeoCRIS of itself is a geospatial component of our Caribbean Risk Information System, and that in itself was sort of conceptualized because of the greater need and the greater usage of GIS and geospatial technologies in disaster management. We humans by nature are visual beings, and we do react better to things that we can see and put, that we can perceive via sight in most cases. So for us, we have focused a lot more on that, and I'll let Renee get into a bit more details on it.
Yeah, thanks, Aronde. And just to add to that, we have an annual training program or exercising program for our Caribbean first responders, as well as our deployment teams that are deployed to support one of the various damage assessments that are done in the region. And the cadre of professionals that we pull from, especially for our detailed damage assessments, include persons from, let's say, the water, wastewater sectors, engineers, structural engineers, as well as health specialists. And we pull from the Caribbean region, our Caribbean CARICOM partners, as well as some of our UN agency partners to support our detailed damage assessments that we carry out during and after an impact. Now, in order to volunteer for those, we have a particular form that you can access and sign up, and you will then go through a rigorous set of trainings and exercisings to keep you abreast annually of the requirements for deployment. And in that would be included a geospatial component for understanding how to map certain things in the activity that you will be participating in. Over.
Yeah, great. That's great, Renee. And I really appreciate all the interactivity here. I'm going to need to stop this great conversation. I wish we could go on all day because we do have a couple more interesting questions coming from the audience. We'll keep those questions. Do keep questions coming in. If we have more time at the end, we'll get back and answer more. But I think we need to move forward. And we wanted to do a quick poll question to you. Kelly, do you want to put a poll question out for us really quickly? And then we're going to move to our colleagues from NASA. So while we're getting the poll set up, a big thank you to Sedima, to Sean, Renee, Orande, and Sean. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. So everyone should be seeing the poll questions on their screen. So we'll give everyone a few moments to answer. And in this first set of questions, there are two. So the first one you see at the top there, what type of data would be useful to you? And you can select all that apply. You can select multiple answers there. And then if you scroll down, there's a question underneath on base maps. What type of base maps do you use the most? And you can select one, just the best answer that applies to you. So again, we'll give everyone a few moments. I see the answers coming in now. So we'll give everyone a chance to go ahead and answer those, and then we will share the results at the end. So again, that first question, you can select all that apply. So if there's more than one, feel free to select multiple answers. And then that second question, just select the one that's the most relevant to you.
Yeah, great. I see lots of answers coming in. Thanks. Thanks for participating. This helps us understand better what's important to you and helps influence what we focus on next for the Caribbean Geoportal. So really important that you give us your feedback here because we're listening to you and what you say is important.
All right, and I see just about 50% of you have put in your answers, so we'll give it just maybe 10, 15 more seconds, and then we'll go ahead and close the poll out. And again, as Linda mentioned, your answers really do help us and with future presentations and what to focus on. So if you want to give your feedback, now is the time.
Yeah, this is great. Really appreciate the interactivity here and all of the responsiveness. I think we're there, Kelly. This is great.
All right, I will go ahead and close this out then and share the results. And it looks like a good majority in that first one. What type of data would be useful to you? It looks like most people selected base map, which includes infrastructure, and then weather and climate data. And on that second question, it looks like most of you, a good majority of you, use hybrids of street and imagery based maps.
That's great. Thanks, Kelly, for that. I'm going to turn it back over to my colleague Sean and ask him to bring us in with the NASA team.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. So this is a presentation. Hopefully I didn't steal too much of their thunder in here, but these are data sets that I've been working with recently and taking a look at with the different applications. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Jeremy Kirkendall, Mr. Garrett Lane, and Mr. Robert Emberson to talk about the NASA data products that they're working on and that are made available through the Caribbean Geoportal. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Jeremy. Oh,
and Sean, you're going to drive the slides, please.
There we go.
All right. Thanks, Sean. So we're with the NASA Disasters Program, and we're going to talk a little bit about what the Disasters Program can do, but a lot about the different kind of data products that exist that are able to be accessed by everyone on this call right now. So let's go to the next slide. And we're going to do a little bit of a Q&A thing here. So Garrett, go ahead and take it away.
All right. So first I'm going to start with just if you can give a little overview about the program, how we support, and then one common question we get is what parts of the disaster lifecycle do we respond to?
So the Disasters Program supports the entire disaster lifecycle. That would include mitigation and preparedness before a disaster happens, but we also do a lot of response during a disaster, and we can even help with recovery after it. So a lot of our products you're going to see are created for response, but there's a number that can be used to monitor before the events happen as well.
All right, cool. So one of the more common disasters that the Caribbean sees is hurricanes and volcanic eruptions. So what kind of products do we create for those type of events?
So on the next slide, so we have a lot of event-specific products that are created for those kinds of disasters, floods, fires, and they are going to typically be 1 to 2 days after the satellite pass happens, keeping in mind we can't control when the satellites pass over. So sometimes there's more of a delay after a disaster happens than other times. The resolution is anywhere from 10 meters and up. We're not extremely high resolution like some of the commercial vendors are, but all of our products are completely free and open for anybody to use. These event-specific products can show you a lot of really cool things, and because we're a research agency, we can kind of tweak stuff in the middle of an event to try out other things. If you have questions that you're trying to answer and that you don't see GIS data for, you can always ask us for help, and maybe we have something that we could create for it. The example you're seeing on the screen is St. Vincent before and after the eruption. And we've got some Sentinel-2 imagery that we processed on there with color infrared on top and natural color on the bottom. And it's pretty remarkable how much of the island was covered in the volcanic ash. So that's just one example of some event-specific products that we've created. On the next slide.
And so if I'm a user who's not familiar with using satellite data, remote sensing data, what's a way I can learn how to best use the data, or what products would be best for me to use?
Right. So a lot of our users are not always familiar with remote sensing products at first, which is why we've created these story maps. So this is the Hurricane Dorian story map. You can see there's a lot of different tabs there that are different kinds of products we've created. And we're trying to tell the disaster story. We're trying to show how you can use the NASA data, show the impact of the disaster, and make it easier to understand. So we've got some imagery from the ISS there that's just really pretty to look at. But on the next slide, I can show you, here's one of our interactive widgets that was used to help explain this product. So we're using the spyglass widget here to kind of peek beneath the clouds. And that blue flood map that is shown in the spyglass is a synthetic aperture radar derived product. Synthetic aperture radar can see through clouds. So we put a GOES image, which is optical, on top to kind of show how, even though Hurricane Dorian was sitting on top of the Bahamas in the middle of the event, we happened to get a really good SAR pass, and we were able to detect the flooding by peeking through the clouds. So that's just one way that we use those widgets and apps to try and help explain the data. And on the next one, next slide, we try to show ways that the data could be used. So this is a side-by-side view with our damage proxy map on the left and that same flood map on the right. It would be hard to view them at the same time, so side-by-side helps there. But we've also added some OpenStreetMap infrastructure data to the maps. And it's a little hard to see, but there's a hospital there, there's some gas stations, there's a power substation included in there. And we're trying to show infrastructure that may have been damaged. So you could take our product and combine it with your own information like this to have a more complete situational awareness of what's happening. And there's the airport that was completely underwater as well at the time of the pass. So these products are produced pretty routinely for events as long as there's a SAR overpass, usually Sentinel-1, but we've also occasionally used JAXA's ALOS 2. And with a 30-meter resolution, you're not going to pick out individual buildings necessarily that may be damaged, but you'll see larger amounts of damage, a lot of debris that happens. The damage proxy map is a form of change detection. So as long as the satellite can see where the changes happened, if it's just flooding inside of a building, we can't necessarily see that. But it's a good proxy for who got hit worst. Where should we start?
Okay, and so now that I've looked through our story map and determined what product might be useful, where can I find the individual services that are used in these applications for an event?
So the product gallery is going to contain all of the products created for a specific event. It's going to be included in the story map, and it'll also include the relevant near real-time products that could be used for this event. But if you were to click on one of those products created for the event, we would see on the next page the metadata and how to interpret it. So the metadata is going to tell you the dates of the imagery, how should you use it, what's the resolution, so that you're not trying to use it for a purpose maybe the resolution can't handle. If you need the REST endpoint for some streaming into your own applications, you can grab it there. There are data download links sometimes with the products when we can include it. And under the terms of use, it'll always say it's 100% free and open for anybody to use, even commercial providers. And our newest products also have a contact us link down there too. So if you have questions, you can just click that and reach right out to us.
Okay, and so everything we've talked about so far has been focused on specific events. So what if I want to monitor conditions before a storm arrives or when there's not a storm ongoing?
So that's where our near real-time products come in. Our program is on the smaller side. We're not considered operational, so we can't respond to everything. We're not working 24/7 around the clock. So this is where the near real-time products supplement our event-specific products. Most of them are global. They are a coarser resolution, but a number of those products are going to be daily. Some of them update even every few hours. And that can be really helpful for general situational awareness. And if you look through the list, there's quite a few different ones that are all applicable to the Caribbean. So we're going to look at a couple of different examples of some really, really good ones. So on the next slide, there is the Black Marble Nighttime Blue-Yellow Composite that was alluded to earlier. This is a daily product. It is going to feed imagery in within just a few hours after it has been acquired. So if you pull up the current day's image, you would see it's a partial image. It's still collecting the rest of the world, but it's fantastic for the quick, who has lost power potentially, where should we concentrate our efforts? The only requirement is that the clouds get out of the way. It is an optical image, so we just need the clouds to move. And in the past, you may have seen day-night band imagery like this before in a black and white color. That band combination doesn't make it as easy to tell where are clouds, because it might be a power outage, or maybe there's just some clouds in the way blocking the lights. So we've taken this band combination, which has been used for a handful of specific events in the past, and we just released it as a near real-time product. So you can clearly see there's clouds covering parts of the islands there. Other parts, the cities are very clear as day. The small towns and villages can be seen. At a resolution of 750 meters, you're not going to see individual blocks of houses lose power, but you're going to see when entire towns and small villages lose it, or cities get significantly darker. It'll be pretty clear when the clouds are out of the way who's lost power. The only thing to keep in mind is the moon phases are going to change the brightness of the ground. So when there's a full moon, the ground will be a lighter yellow color. And if it's hard to tell if lights have changed, we recommend looking at a month ago compared to the current imagery, because it'll be the same moon phase. So this is definitely one of the products we really recommend that you guys look into. And on the next slide, I can show you an example of when it came in handy. This is from Hurricane Michael in 2018 when it hit the US. You can see it follows that red track there. And you're going to see little yellow dots start popping back up. And those are all the small towns and cities that had just started coming back online. A lot of people lost power from that storm. So Hurricane Michael was a fast moving storm. It worked really well with this product. Other slower moving storms like Hurricane Dorian would delay how quickly we could use it because it sat on top of the Bahamas for a couple of days. On the next slide, we've got our soil moisture products. So it's a 3-day composite, and then it's about 2 days after that when it updates. So it's a few days old by the time it's been completely updated, but it's still a good view of what are the ground conditions right now. You know, how wet or dry is the ground? If things are getting very dry, we might have a higher risk of the plants being drier. Maybe there's more fuel available for wildfires. If the ground is extremely saturated and a hurricane is coming, then we might be more concerned about flooding more than other times. The resolution is not the best. It's a 1/4 degree, so it's going to be better for the larger countries, but it is still a global product. Anywhere in the world, you can use this product. So it is a good layer for situational awareness. And on the next slide, you might be wondering, is wet or dry out of the ordinary? Because some places are always wet or always dry. So that's where the soil moisture anomaly layer comes in. Is the white parts of the map are normal range of conditions, nothing's too out of the ordinary, but the yellow to brown, red color is going to be things are drier than normal. So that would be something worth paying attention to. Or as shown down in Venezuela on that image, you can see it goes blue to pink, and that's going to be more saturated than normal. So your 2 soil moisture layers give you a nice view of what are things like, and should we be a little concerned? Are we going to have a drought? Could there be a flood if there's even more rain coming? They're really helpful for that. On the next slide. If you're wondering where the rain's going, we've got the global precipitation measurement products. So these products are a few different increments of time. The 30-minute is kind of nice like a radar. If you don't have ground-based radar, you can use the 30-minute product to observe where the storms are moving on a decent interval. And if the storm is outside of the range of your radar, it's out of the ocean, that's where these products are also helpful. You can track the storms where it's dumping all of its precipitation as it's coming towards you. The 3-hour and 1-day intervals are really nice because you can use them to look at where the heaviest rain fell. And maybe those areas would have experienced more flooding than other parts of the country. The resolution is decent at 0.1 degrees, but it does update. The services will update every 3 hours with all of the latest imagery that's been added to them. On the next slide, we've got the evaporative stress index. So this product is actually really nice if you're looking at historical data. Most of our near real-time products are going to have around 30 days worth of data. If you want to look at historical data, we can most likely point you to the archives of it. But this is one service that's hosted by another group that has the full back to, I believe it's 2001 set of data. And what's really nice is that even though it's a weekly product and it's about 2 weeks behind when it gets updated, it's a good resolution, and it'll show you where vegetation is being stressed out by dry soil conditions. So your soil dries out, and then if it's really getting dry, the evaporative stress index would start showing that evapotranspiration is stopping, the plants are drying out, and now you've got a much higher potential for wildfires with more of a fuel load available. On the next slide.
So you've shown a lot of different near real-time products. Is there a good way to combine them to look at their different variables all at once?
Yep. So we try to show people how they can use our data. The tropical cyclone dashboard here is one example. It's showing an image of the US, but it does have a lot of global layers in it that would work for the Caribbean as well. It's got our NASA products in it, but it also has the National Hurricane Center's forecast track and the cone of uncertainty. We have GOES imagery. There's a few other products in there. And what we're trying to do is just spark some inspiration for you guys. Take our data, combine it with other agencies, with your country's data, and make a dashboard like this. Have that total situational awareness from everybody's data in one spot, so that you know where's the storm going, what are the conditions of where it's going to, what kind of infrastructure do we have that we could combine in there, and just have that complete overview of what's happening. And while we've talked about hurricanes a lot, the program does respond to quite a few other types of disasters. So now we're going to switch over to landslides. And Robert, could you tell us about products that we might have to show susceptibility for landslides?
Sure, thanks, Jeremy. So I think, as many of you have pointed out already, landslides are a really significant challenge in the Caribbean region. And I think NASA is in a position to provide data globally, but this is also at a resolution that may be useful locally. So specifically for looking at landslide susceptibility, we've developed the global landslide susceptibility map, and this is at a 1 kilometer resolution, which again is not as fine as some applications might require, but it is generally applicable. And this is, as you can see here, the image with hotter colors indicating places with high landslide susceptibility, can be used to give a kind of a static impression of the places where we expect landslides to be most likely to occur. So this is a useful thing just for kind of planning and sort of long-term mitigation purposes.
So that's pretty cool, but it is static. Do we have anything more real-time that could help assess with current situations? We do.
So if we go to the next slide, there is a video here. Yeah, it's going to work. Fantastic. So what we've worked on is what we call the LHASA model, which is the Landslide Hazard and Situational Awareness model. And this is essentially builds our susceptibility map, a static map, and incorporates the high resolution, so the low latency satellite rainfall data from the GPM satellite. And what you can see here is that the colors, the yellow and red colors underneath the rainfall product, indicates areas in Mexico during Hurricane Willa that were likely to have experienced landslides in that specific moment. So this is combining rainfall data with this static landslide susceptibility map to provide an assessment of the most likely places and time and place where landslides are likely to happen. And this product is available in near real time, and it's something we've been running for several years now. And the latency on this product is about 4 hours, the same as the satellite rainfall product. So this is a useful tool in the course of a disaster to look at where places are most likely to be affected.
That's pretty cool. So you said this has been out for a while. Is there any kind of update to the model that's been in progress?
So this is really exciting. If we go to the next slide, perfect, thank you. So I mentioned this because we are just in the process of publishing in the next few weeks a new version of our landslide susceptibility map, a landslide hazard map. The original version had a kind of binary classification of moderate or high hazard. The new version uses a machine learning approach to develop a kind of a probabilistic assessment of where landslides are likely on a 0 to 1 scale. So this is a much more refined version of this. And then the figure I'm looking at, you're seeing here, this is just an example of an output for the new model, which we're calling LHASA 2. And the hot colors indicate places where we suspect there's a higher likelihood of landslides. And if we're zooming into this part of Southeast Asia in this example, you can see that the places where the model predicted that there would be higher incidence of landsliding with warmer colors was also when we mapped landslides. And so that's using these kind of, in the dark, the black outlines here, landslides that we mapped as part of a separate research project. So it's demonstrating that this product is a really valuable way of assessing the places in real time that are most likely to be affected. And we're really excited to be able to share this today, because this is a product we're just about to publish, and hopefully we'll have it on the portal as soon as it's online, and it should be a step forward in landslide situational awareness globally.
That's great to see the new product coming. Is there anything that we could provide on the ground to help refine your products?
So again, thanks for the prompt, because if we go to the next slide, we have been developing for several years now. We've been developing a citizen science project called Landslide Reporter. And basically, we ask anyone in the public space who has seen a landslide or experienced a landslide, they can go onto our website, landslides.nasa.gov, and you can use this to, you can log points or polygons of landslides that you've experienced in your own work into our catalog. And what this helps us do is not only to build a larger catalog of landslides around the world, and this is what we refer to as COOLA, the cooperative online open landslide repository. But this also provides a way for us to calibrate and validate our models more effectively. So in some ways, by contributing to this catalog, you're improving the outputs that we can then provide to you. So it's a real, you scratch my back, I can scratch yours in some way, because if you help, and if you see landslides in the wild and report them, we can use that to improve our systems and provide a better output to you for landslide assessment. So we're really, again, this is an exciting project, and if you do have any interest in talking about this, please do feel free to reach out, and we'd be happy to discuss more effective ways to incorporate data. It doesn't just have to be single landslides you've seen. If you have large inventories of landslide data, we can also add those into our catalog and build a larger inventory that's for the global good. So I really wanted to say this is exciting, something I'm really personally excited about. So thanks.
Thanks, Robert. So we've shown quite a few different products today. On the next slide is the URL of where the NASA data can be found in the Caribbean Geoportal. We've also got an email address for GIS questions in general for our products. If you are experiencing a disaster where we might be able to provide some remotely sensed data, you can contact that middle email address. And if you have landslide questions, Robert's address is on there as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out if there's questions about using our products, and everything that we showed off today, including the citizen science app, the Landslide Reporter, can all be found on that Caribbean Geoportal page.
Yeah, that's really great. I appreciate all of that, Jeremy. And I'm going to actually throw two questions out at the same time. One for Sean, if you wouldn't mind, because people are asking where that NASA page is. So perhaps you could show that to us. And I'll remind everyone that we will share links, and we will share the presentation and the slides from all presenters today afterwards. So anyone who's signed up for this session will get a follow-up email with all that information for you. So Sean is showing the portal right now, and you can see where you can easily navigate down to that and find the information on NASA.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. So this is the main landing page for the Caribbean Geoportal. If you scroll about halfway down the page to the agencies providing data section, there's a direct link to the URL that Jeremy had referenced. And this is a page that allows a better understanding or refresh your understanding of what the team does, as well as access to the different data sets or types of data that Jeremy had referenced. And all of them are available right here and can be brought into the maps. You can launch the app that Robert had referenced, as well as how to do that, how to learn how to access that information. So the category or the near real-time products, we've got those cataloged here for you as well. And the historical event data, we make that info available. So it's all readily available and easy to get to right off the main landing page.
Yeah, one point of clarity, the question for you, Jeremy, coming in from Belize, they're saying they didn't see Belize referenced in a lot of the slides or the screenshots you were showing, but this data covers all areas of the region, correct?
Correct. The near real-time products, there are, I believe, 3 of them that are specific to the US. The rest of them are completely global products. So they will cover all of Central, South America, everywhere.
Okay, great. Great. Well, again, thanks to you and the team from NASA. A really great work. We appreciate all the contributions your team is doing and the collaboration with Carigeo and the Caribbean Geoportal. But I am going to have to keep us moving because we have a couple of other great presentations to get to at this point. And I am going to invite Ms. Laverne Ryan to come up and to share her screen and to give us a little bit of a walkthrough from her perspective of what's been happening in her part of the world. Laverne, over to you.
Thanks, Linda. Okay, I'm going to share my screen in a second. Okay.
And it's coming in now. Great. Perfect.
I can see. Okay. So good morning, everyone. I'm just here to share a little bit of my experience. I'm from the island of Montserrat. And currently our situation is that we have a safe area and a restricted area. So this is our current living situation. We have lived with our volcano for the past 25, going on 26 years. And back in 1995, when it first started, we had a column collapse and we had pyroclastic flows. Yeah, and then all pyroclastic flows reached the seas, and all these images have been certainly ingrained in our minds. In 1997, our Plymouth capital was completely destroyed. And with those images in mind, the experience we've had of ash fall on our communities and having to deal with ash and cleaning the ash, although we know that it's usually a futile effort. Learning about St. Vincent and what happened in April this year, I had to use my knowledge and my skills to respond. So back in 2019, I volunteered with the group Map Action. And Map Action is a UK-based charity which responds to humanitarian crises. With that in mind, and the experience that I knew that St. Vincent would have to go through, I volunteered for deployment, although it was a remote response. Myself, along with Mike, who is also part of our Caribbean section, we were both recruited in 2019. We responded to the call for helping St. Vincent and the Grenadines, along with a few other persons who were scattered around the world. So there was Pip and Ant in the UK and Jorge, as well as Matt in New Zealand, and Mike and I in the Caribbean. And this kind of gave us a good balance towards responding. So when Matt was sleeping, we were up. When we were sleeping, he was up. So we kind of had that balance going. We had daily team briefings. We were able to join the CDMA team in responding to, we supported CDMA in our response. We supported Renee, who you heard from before, and in the assessment and analysis cell, as well as the information management cell. So based on their requests, Map Action, previously before our deployment, we did what we call a data scramble. So we're able to gather as much data as possible about St. Vincent. And based on their requests, we produced several maps to aid in their response. So initially, we started with our population baseline data. The census data that we received was from 2012. So although a bit outdated, we had to use what we had, and we produced this baseline population map, as well as a map showing the affected areas within St. Vincent. So we mapped areas where persons were evacuated from. A total of 20,000 persons had to move from their homes in the red zone to the green zone. And for me personally, that was mind-blowing because the population of Montserrat currently is just under 5,000. So the logistics of having to move 20,000 people, I mean, that was certainly a feat. We produced data with regards to the location of shelters, the status of shelters, whether they were open or closed. We tried to get data in relation to male, female population, and also age groups. Although that was a bit slow in coming, we utilized what we had and produced data to assist with the situational awareness. Additionally, we included data from the ash fall and how it impacted areas. We updated our maps to show persons who were living in private homes, persons who were living in the shelters, and persons who were actually in hotels. All this information was provided to SEDEMA for their situational updates. Additionally, we showed maps to indicate the impact on the water resources within St. Vincent and the Grenadines, just to have that situational awareness as to who is affected and where things are located. We've also updated maps to show the health status, the health clinics which were open, their capacities, and things like that, just to give that situational awareness as to where people can go in need of help. So Map Action has produced lots of maps. It's available at maps.mapaction.org. And we eventually created a web map which allowed persons to interact with the data that we had presented and be able to zoom in. It's a dynamic map, so you can zoom in, zoom out, and evaluate exactly what was happening within St. Vincent. So although not being able to be on the ground, like Map Action would usually be, we were able to support the response to St. Vincent. And personally, the lessons that I have learned from this experience is that it's important to have up-to-date geospatial data. It's important to have data which is easily accessible. And it's important to have data which can be easily shared with other persons who can help. Because for instance, those persons in St. Vincent, they were not thinking of GIS at the time. I mean, they had their personal lives to take care of. They had to be safe first before thinking of work. So having data that can be easily shared can help us to help others. And the geospatial data is a very important tool for timely decision making, and that can be the difference between life and death. So, and again, I blogged about it, so there's a link to my blog as to my personal experience with this response. And I was just so happy that I was able to support St. Vincent and the Grenadines in this juncture. Thank you. Back over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Laverne. That is amazing. And I'm sure everybody will agree. Some of those photographs are just unbelievable. So appreciate you sharing that, appreciate the hard work and the support of Map Action to SVG. I'm sure the citizens there appreciated it too. I want to bring in Dornette now. She is our last speaker, but by no means least, because she is going to talk about what happened there in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and how they responded. Dornette, I can ask you if you would to come in and share your screen as well. And there you are, and you're on mute as well. So please unmute yourself.
Hi, good morning.
Perfect. And did you want to share your slides? There we go, coming in. Awesome. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, well, good morning again to everyone. Well, good day to everyone. My presentation this morning is about the La Soufrière volcanic eruption that took place in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, April 9th. At present, we have not gotten the all clear from the scientists, so we are still in the eruptive state. The eruption basically started effusively in December, and in April, we had the first explosive eruption where we saw our first plume. We then further had like about 30 eruptions from that date to present time. At the moment, the policymakers have not had that discussion and that conversation as into the policies that we're going to use to go forward from here, from this eruption. So our road to recovery has somewhat not started because we are still in an eruptive state. However, it is my opinion that GIS technology can be used to assist us on our road to recovery. What we need to recognize is that GIS technology is data-driven, is a data-driven tool, and how we can use this technology that we have available to us today to chart our way forward is the questions that GIS can help us to answer. Because we had an explosive eruption in 1902, and we had one in 1979. And GIS technology, I am pretty sure, was not available to us in this part of the region at those days. So the data sets that we need to collect now are data sets that's going to inform what will happen after the next eruption. We must start collecting that data today for our next eruption. The technology must be used to guide our policymakers on the way forward regarding their various policies. We have different sectors. We need to know what data we have, what data do we need. The agriculture sector, how damaging was the volcanic eruption? What about the soil content? What about our tourism sites that were affected? Our population that was displaced, the trees that were damaged, forestry would need to know how do we replant, where do we replant, what impacts were there on our marine life, our transportation network in the evacuation. How was it affected? How can evacuation be done seamlessly? Our water supply, how safe it is to drink, how, our infrastructure that was damaged, by the eruption and still are being damaged now as we are in the hurricane season and we face other hazards. This is just a snippet of some of the events and how that happened in the volcanic eruption based on the land has changed, On the left, you can see the Trinity Falls, which is a tourism site, the before picture, and you see the after picture. How has our terrain changed? There's the Oria Big River before and after. There's the northwestern side of the country. There's two other villages to the bottom, the right hand to the bottom, two other villages, and you see the different dates and how the eruption has affected our terrain. We need to identify the areas that are most likely to be impacted by lahars and pyroclastic flows. In the photo, you can actually see the pyroclastic density current that is actually, the land was still steaming in that photo on your left, and the photo on the right recently happened. We had a tropical system, a tropical depression that brought down lahars in some of the villages. And the village Sandy Bay, which is in the north of the island, was grossly affected. And this dwelling house on your right was damaged by a lahar. So these areas need to be mapped and need to be known to the community, as we would need this data for forecasting and disaster preparedness. So this is information that we need to get now today, as our eruption is still going on and we still wait on the scientists. We have to always be in a state of preparedness. As we all know, 80% of our decisions are based on location, and knowing where is the most likely path of the next lahar can save lives. It would determine evacuation. The evacuation process cannot be a multiple choice question. We need to know exactly what it is we need to do, because we saw in the recent eruption, a lot of things happen that, you know, could have been done better. And GIS technology is the tool that we can use on our road to recovery. We need to establish and understand that we need a broad-based committee on our road to recovery. We need GIS experts, we need development planners, geologists, volcanologists, engineers, architects, economic planners, gender specialists, data management specialists. The recovery process must be a global effort and requires a strategic and a collaborative approach. We all need to work together. We have to have the buy-in of all the stakeholders so that we can harness the anecdotal data to inform the starting point. Where do we start from here? When we have our all clear, where do we start? How can we get the data that we need? What are the data gaps? I saw in Lavern's presentation, she has a lot of data. And is this data being shared with the country, with St. Vincent and the Grenadines? I know CDMA has the data. Has CDMA shared this data? We need access to data so that we can assist our policymakers in guiding and informing the policies to go forward. We must always remember, it is said that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. So today is the day when we decide now how we are going to go forward with the data sets that are out there, to the information that's out there to be collected and the information that we have here with us. And GIS technology is a tool that we can use today to help us guide our policymakers in making an informed decision as into how we go forward from here. There are many opportunities that were created through our volcanic eruption. How are we going to go forward using the opportunities out of the ashes? We can see the devastation that took place in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. In the top left photo, that is basically an aerial view showing ash fall on the homes in one of the red zones. To the bottom, it's one of our rivers, the Walilabu River. And to the right, we see almost a 40 feet height difference of ashfall from the Sufe volcano at the Walilabu River. And to the bottom, right, we see the Rabaca Bridge on the northern side of the island and the Rabaca River running through, where some lahars came down and pyroclastic flows came down, and the bridge was actually, the pyroclastic flows, when they came down, they were steaming, you know, destroying everything in its path. And I saw Lavon's photos are so familiar to me, although they're in Montserrat. In St. Vincent, we had the similar experience. And these are the things that we need to take into consideration when we consider our road to recovery. The data sets that we need, and using the technology that we now have available to us to take us forward into the future. Thank you very much.
Oh, that was great. Thank you so much, Dornette. And again, just those visuals are amazing and shocking. And we all wish that we could very much help you as much as possible. I do have one question for you. This question came up earlier from Allenson, but he was interested in lahar data. He said, is there a map showing the path of the lahars during and after? And is that accessible to the public?
Well, we are the physical planning. We are the central repository for spatial data on the island. We work very closely with NEMO, and we have not been able to go into the red zone as yet. We are now beginning the process of data collection in the red zone. And I know that I did see a map showing the lahars from Map Action. So I am assuming that Map Action has that data set, but we at the physical planning, we do not have that data set.
Okay, all right, great. Well, then there's an action there, a follow-up that we need to get with Laverne and team and see how we can get some of that Map Action data shared into the Caribbean Geoportal so that folks have access to it. Yeah. With that, I'm going to thank you again. That was a really great presentation. I do want to turn it back to Kelly for one last poll question. Kelly, can you walk us through that poll now?
Yeah, no problem. So everyone again should be seeing that poll question on their screen. We're only going to leave this one open maybe about 30, 40 seconds since we're running a little short on time. So the question, what areas do you have need for skill development? And again, you can select all that applies. So if there's more than one answer here that's relevant to you, go ahead and select more than one. And again, we'll leave it open just for a short window here. So we always appreciate your participation. And it's just the one question this time. So yeah, again, just a few more seconds and we appreciate all the answers. I see them coming in now, and we will share those results once we close it.
Yeah, it's great. I see lots of participation. Thank you all. Again, this helps us to understand best what you need from CARIGEO and Caribbean Geoportal perspective. So do we need more data? Do we need more tools? What is it that we really need to help you with new learn lessons in a particular area and so on. So thanks for sharing those answers in, really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I see just over 50% of you have put in your answers. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out, Linda, and share the results. So if anyone has any last minute votes, now's the time. All right, I'm going to end this and share. And it looks like 70% of you picked design and planning. It was pretty close across the board. Linda, I don't know if you had any other thoughts on the results here that you wanted to share.
No, that's great. We'll share all of this out afterwards. Again, I did see another question about the sharing of the content, all the content, the recording, the presentations, links. We'll get all of that to you. So long as you're registered, you're going to get a follow-up email with all that great content. And thank you for that, Kelly. I do want to just leave you with a couple of last thoughts as we're closing out here. I know it's top of the hour. I want to say thanks to all of our presenters for being here again today. I do hope the session was really useful. The CARIGEO team has worked very hard to bring this to you. And we are launching a new community page on the portal. We hope that you will go there and sign up. We'll again share those links to you. Very important for us to build this community. We also do have another short survey that we will leave up, and this will be an ongoing survey because we want to better understand what you're working on and how we can help you. So this survey is meant for you just to be able to share projects or initiatives or programs that you're working on around disasters, disaster response, disaster management. So this QR code will take you there. The slides also have the link to the live survey in it. So hoping that you join us and share your information there as well. And one last thing as a reminder, this is the second in a 3-part webinar series. So we're going to take a little break, come back towards the end of the summer with our next webinar on metadata maintenance and best practices. This is meant for those of you who want to share data publishers. So hoping that we have many ministries and agencies coming back to join us in that session and to share your information or learn how you can better do that. So again, really appreciate everyone being here. I'll tell my team and everyone out there, cameras on. Want to see you all and appreciate everyone being here. Really a great session. Thanks, Simone. Thanks, Michelle, Rashawn, Laverne, Tornette, Garrett, the NASA team, Jeremy, everyone. Really appreciate all of you. And we'll hope to see you next time and let us know what else we can do.